So thanks for joining the top 5 in 5. These are the use cases that describe how customers have leveraged Zowe for their strategic initiatives. My name is Sakach. I'm an offering manager at Broadcom, but more importantly, I am a member of the Zowe community and serve several roles within Zowe. One is on the Zowe Advisory Council, the product management arm of Zowe, if you will. I'm a member of the technical steering committee of Zowe. I lead the Zowe onboarding squad, and I'm also a member of the security work group within Zowe. And I am here on behalf of all of my Zowe hats, if you will. Just a quick question. Has everyone heard of Zowe? Yes. Awesome. All of you have installed Zowe? Yes. Okay, that's right in line with the statistics that we've been reading and we've been hearing, and that most close to 70% of you will or have installed Zowe. And that's why you're all here today, right? To learn about the use cases. So just a little bit of context to make sure we're all on the same page when we talk about Zowe. Zowe isn't necessarily a product or a solution, and it's an extensible framework whose main purpose is to help what we say modernize the mainframe. And we'll explain what that means in a few minutes because I know it means different things to different people. So essentially what we're looking at is having the ability to provide consistent access to ZOS systems and services, leverage industry standard methodologies, and make mainframe an exciting career choice. Translation is Zowe was intended to help address the 3 main tenets or challenges that mainframe shops are facing today: people, process, and tools. We do this, Zowe presents this mainframe modernization solution, if you will, by introducing a number of components. We call them projects in the mainframe community, in the Zowe community. Some on client side, some that live on the server side. And essentially, they are a command line interface, an API mediation layer that has the job of managing and securing all of the services that are designed and implemented to give you the ability to access mainframe, if you will. We have a desktop or a web UI that offers the ability to access mainframe functions through a web browser. We have 2 explorers now. One is a Visual Studio Code extension that we call Zowe Explorer. We also have another Zowe Explorer that was introduced for IntelliJ users. And their primary function is to give you access to mainframe jobs and files through these modern and more popular interfaces. We also, just for your awareness, we haven't stopped there. The community is looking at more technologies to make the mainframe even more accessible and more modern, if you will, one of which is called Zowe Chat, to enable chatbots to execute Zowe commands and introduce the ability to take advantage of collaborative tools and integrate those with mainframe. So, interestingly enough, when Zowe was introduced back in 2018, and some of the top 5 in 5 was designated as 5 because this year is Zowe's 5-year anniversary. And in the 5 short years that Zowe has existed, it has achieved many milestones, one of which is that it won Best DevOps for Mainframe Solution 2 years in a row, which is good news and bad news for us in the Zowe community. Good news in that we're recognized as a modern mainframe solution. Bad news, if you will, is that folks started to associate Zowe with DevOps and only DevOps solution. But the good news is you're all here to learn that there are more use cases beyond DevOps that Zowe can satisfy. Also, what many of you may not realize is that, yes, Zowe was created by 3 major vendors who all offered and contributed technology and software and people to the Open Mainframe project, Zowe. But Zowe originally was created, if you will, to solve a problem that the engineers who contributed the code had themselves. So it really makes Zowe more than, a technology that was introduced in the market just for the sake of introducing open source in the mainframe. It's a technology that solved a problem for folks who are actually just learning mainframe. If you're interested in how that happened, how it began, who started what, was it Rocket, was it IBM, was it CA? Read Zowe's 5-year journey from concept to key modernization enabler for mainframe. That gives you all the gory details on how it began. So before we actually get into the 5 use cases that I've outlined for you today, I wanted to share this quote with you because this is something that just happened a week or 2 ago. And this, in my opinion, is a Zowe community member's dream. To hear a customer say, we realized we need Zowe in order to embark on all of our mainframe modernization initiatives. I couldn't have written a better quote myself. This is what's happening now. 5 years in, our mainframe customers are realizing that we need to lay that Zowe framework down, that extensible Zowe framework, in order to embark on all of our mainframe modernization initiatives. So let's take a look at some of the initiatives and some of the use cases that they're embarking on to help make their mainframe modern, to tackle those people, process, and tool challenges that everybody's having. So fundamentally, the use cases revolve around these 3 categories: education, automation, and visualization. What do we mean by that? We'll start with number 1 use case, mainframe education. Who's leveraging Zowe for mainframe education? Lots of people, lots of places, but the Open Mainframe project itself is leveraging Zowe for mainframe education. If you remember back when COVID first hit, there was somewhat of a scare. I think it was the state of New Jersey who put out a post saying, looking for COBOL developers. They had systems and applications that were running COBOL programs that needed to be maintained, and they were in desperate need of mainframe COBOL developers. The beauty about open source doesn't have the red tape, doesn't have the process overhead that all of the vendors have. We could spin up a project and address a problem faster than anyone else in the industry can. And the Open Mainframe project did just that. With the help of some of the community members from Zowe, they started the COBOL programming course at OMP. And the COBOL programming course leverages Zowe. And specifically, it leverages the Zowe Explorer. Jobs and files from a VS Code extension, very common, very popular technology at the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. In addition to that, there are vendors using Zowe. IBM's Zowe Explorer learning platform leverages Zowe Explorer and Zowe when they train new to mainframers on Zowe. Thousands and thousands of folks have gone through that course. Additionally, I didn't put it on this slide, but one of the most popular training vendors, Interskill, offers a Zowe Foundations course. And Interskill has shared with us that that is the #1 issued badge for mainframe within all of their courseware, the Zowe Foundation. So lots of folks are getting on board and learning mainframe by leveraging Zowe, as well as within Broadcom itself, we train our ASE, our Associate Software Engineers on Zowe, and we train our Vitality folks that we train up on mainframe and train up on all of our products, and then work with our customers to place these students in their organizations to uplift any mainframe deficiencies that they may have. As we all work towards, the traditional mainframers who are retiring, onboarding those who are new to mainframe to ensure that this vital platform retains its ability to function. As well as, customers themselves now are starting to leverage Zowe. The IBM Zowe Explorer learning platform, and some of our IBM colleagues within the community have told us that they take bits and pieces from that course and actually train within their own organization. And Zowe is being leveraged at schools now, universities across the world. And primarily, what are they using? I mentioned this, it's Zowe Explorer. It's a Visual Studio Code extension. Doesn't look like mainframe, but it's accessing mainframe jobs and files. Ideally, what many of our customers are looking for is not a mainframe developer, not a distributed developer, not a cloud developer, but a full stack developer, someone who can develop regardless of platform, regardless of language. Zowe Explorer is our entry point into adoption with over 100,000 unique installs. So we can essentially say with confidence that 100,000 people have downloaded and have probably done something with Zowe Explorer. Now, it isn't Zowe Explorer alone, because this is just mainframe jobs and files. Rose, what about all the other mainframe products and services? How does that fit in? Well, there's a growing marketplace for mainframe extensions in the Visual Studio Code marketplace. So yes, you start with Zowe Explorer to access your jobs and files, but now you can expand and leverage the large amount of extensions that are being delivered and continue to be delivered over the course of the coming years. And what you want to look for is the Zowe Explorer for VS Code Conformance badge to ensure that any new mainframe extension that you choose to incorporate into your workspace plays nicely with the Zowe Explorer for Visual Studio Code. Additionally, we're hearing from our colleagues at IBM that the feedback on leveraging Zowe and Zowe Explorer in particular is phenomenal. Quotes like, "Zowe is the way forward." Professors at universities describing how upset his students were when he introduced Zowe later on in the course after having to educating his students on using traditional mainframe methods. And new to mainframe users just getting excited about the possibilities of what they can do with mainframe, starting with Zowe Explorer. So that's number one, education. Number two starts with enabling DevOps. I started this discussion by saying the good news, bad news was that Zowe won some DevOps awards and we were automatically associated with being a DevOps solution. Well, we are, and we can talk about that. But there are several automation use cases, and three of which fall in this category. The first one that we're going to talk about, is enabling DevOps. Essentially, all of these fall under the tackle what slows you down. You've installed Zowe, you're ready to use Zowe, tackle what slows you down. One way to do that is to enable DevOps. Building pipelines, blending your mainframe into your existing pipelines. We talked about Zowe Explorer being the primary component in the education use case. Zowe CLI, the command line interface, is the primary component for blending mainframe into pipelines and delivering enterprise DevOps. It's an integration automation enabler. It allows you to script into your existing orchestration tools, whether that's Jenkins or a vendor product, Definitely counts on all of the vendors or the vendors that supply your software tool to extend Zowe, meaning you need to look for the Zowe CLI extension that's associated with the product that you need to integrate with. But fundamentally, Zowe CLI is what gives you the ability to deliver on Mainframe DevOps. And what does that mean for you as a company? That means that you can take advantage of same process, same tool, regardless of platform. You have the ability to rationalize on your tool set by leveraging the command line interface and integrating Mainframe into your existing DevOps processes. That's use case number 2. Number 3, same theme, automation. We're talking about self-service here, specifically by empowering developers. And when you empower developers, on the other side of that coin, you're taking a load off of your administrators, typically. Meaning, don't allow your DBAs or your scheduling administrators or your source code administrators to do work that's so mundane and so repetitive that it could be automated. Automated with control. So the theory here and the thought process here is consider offloading tasks that involve those administrators by enabling automation with guidelines. The first several that we see happening with our clients are self-service test data management and self-service scheduling maintenance. Quick little picture here, if you will, of self-service data management is writing Zowe CLI scripts that allow developers to create schemas, DB2 databases, if you will, that match schemas that exist in production but are reproduced in a test area with obfuscated test data. Something that traditionally DBAs would be having to do. They can now write scripts and authorize, not necessarily developers, but authorize IDs, service IDs, if you will, to have the ability to interact with the appropriate database tools, techniques, schemas, if you will, get the correct authority, create that schema, and populate it. It can be a CLI command that the developers execute directly, or it could be a script that the developers would execute. But regardless, you're taking that administrator out of the picture, shifting left that responsibility to the actual developers. That's number 3. Number 4, again, under the automation theme, integrate. Integrate with off-host, meaning connect mainframe technologies with technologies that exist outside of mainframe. We've been trying to do this for years, and some vendors are able to do it, but more than likely, you're in a vendor lock-in situation. You don't have the ability to decide what tool integrates with what tool, because I don't have the statistic. Elliot has the statistic, but most customers don't have a single vendor for their software. In fact, it's probably 100% the opposite, right? Have many mainframe and technology vendors within your organization. So with this use case, what we're trying to do is achieve more, be more efficient, more effective, without involving those specialists within your organization. And the use case that we have here is related to operators and operational recovery. So if you want to eliminate the back and forth that goes on with operators, and the specific use case is related to, I'm the developer on call, my batch job went out with an abend, I get called in the middle of the night, or during the day, whatever that may be. Now my batch window is at risk. There's a lot of communication that would go on between the app developer on call, and the operator who's looking at the console, trying to relay back what went wrong, what the condition codes are. And not only that, once I'm aware as the developer on call and I'm making changes, I know what needs to happen next. I know whether to force complete the job, whether to restart or rerun the job. I know what step to restart it at, and I know whether or not I need to trigger another job. All of these can be configured using the REST API for the scheduling application. And it could also, these types of responses could be items in a checklist within a ticketing system. That's what we mean by connecting technologies, leveraging Zowe, leveraging the services that a vendor would provide through Zowe's API mediation layer. And then the fifth and final use case focuses on insights and focusing on statistics that matter. And this is more about being able to pull information from the mainframe and merging it with a system that already exists, whether it's a vendor application or an open source application. The idea here is to put that information in a format that helps, whether it's you, whether it's a systems programmer, but more than likely an executive within your organization that needs to look at specific information being pulled from the mainframe to make critical decisions fast. And in this use case, some of our customers are leveraging some of the products that we produce at Broadcom. Those products leverage Zowe under the covers. Some of our customers are more interested in writing their own dashboarding applications, if you will, by taking advantage of the services that are now available through the API mediation layer. So APIs afford you the ability to write apps to access the data that's available through that application programming interface. So very overly simplistic example of how this is done. Again, you see the resources on the right representing the mainframe, all of the services that come, I should say all of the tools and solutions that sit on the mainframe are transitioned in the form of services managed by Zowe's API mediation layer, accessed either directly by developers who write apps using APIs, or if there's a CLI plugin, a command line interface, if you will, you could access those same services by running command line interface, CLI commands. Regardless, that information can now be pulled into a database, an open source database, and also graphed using an open source graphical interface. And now you have access to information that matters. So use case number 5 is providing a method to give you insights to data that matters in the form that you need it in order to make critical decisions. Additionally, the Zowe desktop, we also refer to it as the web UI, offers you the ability to write desktop apps. Similar to apps that you see on your phone, you have the ability to deliver an application, a modern-looking application, if you look at some of the examples here, that, again, deliver information in a modern manner that helps you to make decisions or act on a critical situation. First example, and in this example you'll find happening with a lot of vendors who produce mainframe solutions. You'll find vendors such as Phoenix Software, who created an EJS web app, vendors that have existing applications, whether they're Eclipse-based or ISPF-based, taking advantage of the application framework to make them more visual, more modern, more accessible, if you will. I know IBM has introduced a lot of apps in the Zowe Marketplace, if you will. We call it, it would be at the Zowe Conformance site. That's where you'll find applications that are Zowe conformant. There are also desktop apps that come out of the box with Zowe itself. And the IP Explorer is an example of an application that one of the developers, one of our engineers within Broadcom developed after having a conversation with a customer who was actually having difficulty managing their network IP addresses. So in summary, if we think about our top 5 and 5, so these are the top 5 use cases that we've either experienced ourselves or heard our clients are implementing throughout the various organizations. In the 5 years that Zowe existed, revolve around education, so learning mainframe, taking advantage of the Zowe Explorer and everything else that's available for mainframe in the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. Automation, either enabling DevOps for the enterprise and rationalizing on your tools and processes, implementing self-service, truly making that shift left, if you will, taking the load off of admins and putting it on developers, and then integrating on-host and off-host, making it easier for an individual to do their jobs without necessarily invoking, in the case that I showed, an operator. And that's where you leverage Zowe CLI and all of the Zowe APIs. And then finally, the 5th is visualization, achieving those deeper insights by taking advantage of either the APIs and producing your own dashboards, leveraging either vendor software or other open source software, or building your own or taking advantage of vendor desktop apps. And that is our top 5 and 5. Questions for me? No? Good? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.